Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warplanes. And today, we're taking a look at the P.1101. Yes, that is the Tier 10 German light fighter. Uh, well, it's one of them at least. But before we get into that, I just wanted to quick say that I will be back in World of Warplanes for a while. I have been really enjoying it. I have a new computer which can handle the game a lot better. And yeah, I would like to try to stream at some point. No guarantee that I will. I tried testing it out a little bit recently. Was having some audio issues. Obviously, my microphone is just quiet. There's nothing I can really do about it. It's just a quiet mic. Um, and because of that, I have to kind of change the settings, play around with the game audio a bit in order to try to make it tolerable. So I know you guys always have to increase your volume quite a bit in order to hear me. I do apologize for that. But if I can get streaming to work, I would like to stream. And I would like to do like tech tree showcases. The first one I'd probably do is the German heavy line, because German heavies, why would I not? So yeah, I would like to do that. So if that's something you're interested in, please let me know, and maybe sometime soon, when I get an opportunity to, I will try to stream. But with that being said, let's get started in today's video. So, the MEP 1101. What's so special about it? Well, if you've flown Tier 10 in any capacity, then you'll know that this plane is quite infamous, right? This plane is very good for very specific reasons, and we will go over those today, but we'll see if it's actually good, right? So the key takeaways from this aircraft is it's got good guns, it's got good airspeed, and good altitude performance with respectable maneuverability. But its survivability is very low. I mean, even for a fighter, is quite low. So let's take a look at things that the 1101 can compete with, such as the FW252, which is the other German Tier 10 light fighter, which also has it's a different aircraft, but it's similar, right? It's an altitude fighter in a way. We have the Swift, which I guess is an altitude fighter, but this one doesn't really compete with it, so we'll kind of take that away. The Swift is very different. The Sabre and the MiG-15. These are definitely the main ones that you're looking at in terms of competition, I guess. So, the 1101. Let's start off with its guns. This plane gets 4 20 mil guns, the MG213Cs, which have 200 damage per second, 700 rate of fire, and an effective range of 2,625 feet. This, for a gun, is very good. Like a lot of guns, they're either like on the Sabre, you'll get a lot of machine guns, but they're machine guns, so their range kind of sucks, and their damage output is not insane. Or you'll get something like heavy firepower, like the MiG, which it has 220s or 223s, and then it's got like a larger 37 gun, which is fine. But for consistency, having 420s are really good. And if you've gone down any of the German lines, then these guns should be very familiar with you. In fact, they are the exact same guns you get on the plane just before this, the 1092. So if you have the 1092 and you are comfortable with those guns, you're not getting anything different. You're getting the same amount of guns. You're getting them in the same location. If you look, it's like all 4 of them are right in the dead center of the aircraft, right? So you're not getting any changes in that regard. If you've played the Batwings, the Tier 8 Batwing gets 2 of these guns, the Tier 9 gets 3, and the Tier 10 gets 4. So you have the same firepower as the Tier 10 Batwing. The FW252, it's getting the same guns as well. This one is getting 2 of them though. So the 252 gets 2 of these guns. Even if you have played the 262 HG2, then that aircraft also has these guns, not the top guns on the 262 HG2, but the second best guns are on the HG2. So needless to say, these are kind of the staple guns for Tier 10 on German aircraft. And really not even just Tier 10, but a lot of lower tier aircraft also have these guns. So you should be pretty familiar with them. On this plane, they're just consistent, right? The time that it takes for them to overheat is reduced, it feels like. It feels like they're a little bit better on this plane, but ultimately, you're getting the same guns, and they do very good work. So, you get 4 guns, they're amazing. If you look at the firepower, that kind of reflects it, right? The Swift only gets 2 Aidens, which, you know, they're questionable in most cases. For consistency, this plane just has it all, right? The 252 gets 2 of them, Sabre gets machine guns, MiG-15, yeah, it's kind of in there. So great for gun armament, and probably that's one of the biggest reasons why this aircraft is so loved is those guns. And I guess if you couple that with the aircraft itself, it just makes this plane very consistent, very reliable, very predictable. You know what this plane can give you. You almost always have an answer to a situation, right? Survivability, though, is garbage. And maybe part of that is just my equipment layout. I may have nuked the survivability quite a bit, but even so, you're a light fighter, and your survivability is not going to be great anyway, so try not to get shot, and if you do, at least come back quickly, right? That's kind of my philosophy. So, you got, with my setup, 420 hit points, and kind of garbage for the other stats. So it's the lowest out of all these aircraft, but it has the best firepower, so we got that. Airspeed wise, it's a rating of 85, and that's with my equipment setup. And none of these other aircraft I'm comparing to are specialized or have any equipment on them whatsoever. So I'm basically comparing a specialized aircraft to non-specialized aircraft, so do keep that in mind. It's not going to be a perfect comparison by any means. But airspeed wise, it's on the lower end, and that's kind of weird that the Sabre has lower airspeed than the 1101, but maybe that's just because of my setup. But either way, the airspeed on this plane is good with my setup. Oh yeah, look at all these buffs. So by stock, it's not quite that good. It's not. It's a little bit lower than these. I would imagine that the Sabre is faster, but I don't know for sure. So out of this comparison, it's on the lower end for airspeed, which, okay, but these are all high altitude, high speed aircraft. So it's not like the biggest deal breaker. You still have a lot more airspeed than, say, the Yak 30 or the Key 162, or like a lot of the multi-role fighters. You have better airspeed than those as well. But I guess for fighters at Tier 10, you are on the lower end. So I guess keep that in mind. Generally speaking, I don't really feel like the airspeed is that bad, but again, maybe that's because of my equipment setup. Maneuverability is a rating of 77. Of course, that's with my bonuses, which I did focus on maneuverability quite a bit. So from the get-go, it's probably not going to be quite that good. I mean, look at the Sabre. The Sabre without any modules has a rating of 77. With my equipment, I have a rating of 77. So I would imagine that without equipment, you're kind of in the same ballpark as the other aircraft, right? So you're not like crazy maneuverable. That's not your defining feature, but you have enough maneuverability to make it work, and you can be very consistent with your maneuverability if you set up the aircraft like me. But even out of the gate, you'll generally have enough maneuverability for what you want to get done, right? And for altitude performance, it's again on the lower end, I guess, which is 77. But the planes I've pulled up here, they are all altitude fighters. So I guess that kind of makes sense, right? These are all altitude fighters. You expect them to have good altitude rating. And although it might not be the best altitude, you generally don't need to go any higher than what this plane allows you to go. You're not really going to use your altitude against altitude fighters to get away, right? Against other altitude fighters, you're going to try to use your maneuverability to try to get away, which, you know, it's not crazy altitude performance, but I mean, you have a rating. You have 8,200 as like your white zone, and then the red zone starts at like 14,000. Like, you're not going to go up that high. You really don't need to go up that high unless you're going against bombers. And even then, I feel like a lot of the bombers don't go up that high, and if they do, generally just ignore them because they're wasting their time. They're going very slow. Their bombs are not effective, and they're kind of just a waste to the team. So if you see a bomber that's way up there, just ignore them. If you have to have more altitude performance than what this aircraft gives you, then you're probably doing something wrong. So that's kind of this plane in a nutshell. Amazing guns, and none of the other stats suck except for survivability, which we don't care about because we're a light fighter, right? And I think the reason that this plane is so loved is because of that. You've got amazing guns. It's not a large aircraft by any means. For a fighter, it's, you know, probably a little bit on the smaller end, honestly. I mean, if we compare it to an LA-15, which is a maneuverable plane, right? The thing about an LA-15 is it's kind of a jack of all trades, but it's kind of more of a maneuverable plane, right? With a MiG-15, which, yeah, it's kind of short, right? But I mean, it's not a small aircraft, but it's by no means like a obnoxious target either. You don't have massive engines like the Key or anything. So, yeah, that's kind of this plane in a nutshell. The main key takeaways from this aircraft are the guns. Like, if you got anything from this aircraft, it's those 4 guns that are located right in the dead center, and these guns are kind of the jewels of this aircraft. They're what make this plane incredible, and you'll probably know that if you have the 1092, because the 1092 is equally amazing, right? Yeah, and none of the other stats are that bad. So, now, let's take a look at the equipment. So, based on what we talked about, where this plane has amazing guns, and the other stats are kind of not bad. They're all pretty, at least average, at the very least. How should we set up this aircraft? And this is where this plane is a little bit interesting, because I don't necessarily take the same equipment that I do on other aircraft. And the reason for that, again, are the guns. The guns are the jewels of this aircraft, and typically speaking, if I can get these guns on target, that's the best part, right? These guns out of the gate are extremely, extremely accurate. Like, there's very few planes in the game that have the accuracy of this aircraft. 50 cal machine guns cannot compare, and any larger caliber guns don't really compare. So for this game, I really feel like 20s are the best consistent guns in the game. And this just has 4 of those 20 cals, or not 20 cals, 20 millimeter machine guns, or cannons or whatever. They're all really good. They're very, very good guns. And so we want to kind of maximize that. They have amazing accuracy. So, for that reason, for the cockpit slot, we have these different options. And you know how I almost always say go for the accuracy? You can go for the accuracy and you'll pretty much be a dead laser. I mean, this plane is already pretty much a laser. These guns are super accurate. But if you went for the gun sight, you'd be even more of a laser, right? I almost always recommend don't go for the navigational radio equipment. It's really not that useful. I guess it can be in some situations, but more often than not, I'd rather increase my combat capabilities rather than seeing my opponents. Like, whoop-de-doo, right? Cockpit armor, your plane sucks in terms of survivability. You don't need to make it any better. There's no point. Like, okay, you increase your pilot's resistance to damage. Okay. Like, just don't get shot. You don't have to worry about that. And even if you do get shot, you should have a consumable, the first aid package, to heal your pilot. So no one should ever be putting cockpit armor on their plane. Just don't. You're wasting your resources, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your plane, is essentially what you're doing. You're wasting your plane. So really the only two that are effective are the sight or the G-suit, and while you're not wrong to do the sight, I love accuracy. You all know me, I love my accuracy. So there's nothing wrong with that, especially since you get some of the sub bonuses, which can increase like your fire damage, your crit damage. It could also maybe make it easier to hit targets that are moving if you did that substat. So by no means is it a bad option, but personally I went for the G-suit. And the reason is I wanted to increase the maneuverability on this aircraft. When I went to start building it, I wanted to try to increase their maneuverability properties as much as possible and the flight characteristics, because the guns are already just absurd. So if I can focus on increasing the flight characteristics of the aircraft, then I can get myself out of pretty much every situation. I always have an answer to a plane that's coming after me, or a plane that I'm going after, right? And having that ability to get on your opponent's tail quickly and stay there and just have options like your airspeed and stuff, that's kind of what I wanted to focus on. And mostly focus on the maneuverability, because I think out of all the stats, other than the survivability, I feel like the maneuverability might be the weakest link. You by no means have bad maneuverability, but I feel like the maneuverability might be the lowest point of the aircraft. So I just wanted to increase that, which is why I went for G-suit with the said substats. Accuracy while firing at moving targets. I mean, that's a pretty useful skill to have, so I'm going to keep that. And maneuverability at high speeds, maneuverability in turns, which is kind of what I was going for. Airframe, we have some options. Don't do HP. Your survivability is so bad that gaining an extra 50 hit points or something is not going to do anything. So don't do that. We don't care about that because our plane's frail anyway, so don't worry about that. We have polished skin or lightweight wing frame. Again, you can kind of do either one you want, but I'm usually okay with the airspeed the way it is. I personally wanted to just increase the maneuverability and make myself more competitive on that front, because my airspeed is not insane and my maneuverability is not insane, but I wanted to focus on the maneuverability, because as we saw, the other planes are faster and they are more maneuverable in a lot of situations. So those are the two stats that I really wanted to pump up, which is why I went lightweight wing frame with these substats. Substats for these ones probably don't matter too much, but they're the ones I went for. For the engine, we get 2 slots. So out of these 3 choices, we can keep 2 of them. So just by looking at this one, which one do we not care about the most? Well, we don't care about our engine, because just don't get shot and your engine won't get shot. So ignore the engine's resistance to damage. It also lowers your aircraft speed, which you don't really want to do. So with that, you kind of just take the combined injection boost system, upgraded engine. Actually, there's 4 options. My bad. You could go for upgraded engine for increased engine, but I usually do that if the engine or if the airspeed is really, really good. And this plane does not have crazy good airspeed. It has good airspeed, but it's not like best at tier airspeed. So I'm going to kind of ignore that one. And obviously we're going to ignore the engine protection. So we're just going to go for the lightweight power unit for more maneuverability, because we love maneuverability. And we're also going to go for the high-speed gas turbine, which increases the boost efficiency, right? And we all care about that boost efficiency, because even if the amount of boost that we get is reduced, let's see, this one gives 15% engine cooldown rate, so it cools down faster, which is great. So even though you're losing your maximum boost potential, like the number of seconds that you get your engine boost back quicker. which is awesome. You're also increasing your speed and acceleration with boost. So I personally just feel like this, I'm really starting to really enjoy this piece of equipment and trying to mount it on a lot of my aircraft, just because having that powerful boost is just so useful. And if we remember, we have engine cooling, so that gives us 10 seconds of free boost. So you don't have to worry about lowered amount of boost. If you go from, let's say, 6 seconds of boost down to 4 seconds, and then you get 10 seconds of boost from your engine cooling, then you're kind of in a better spot anyway, especially since you get better performance from your boost, which is nice. And the last piece of equipment, you really don't want to do burst length. So burst length, if you're not quite sure, just increases the amount of time, how long you can fire your guns without them overheating. So burst length, you're not really going to have an issue with that in this plane. The burst length is not like really fast. Like they don't overheat immediately, and when they do overheat, you kind of just lay off the trigger for 2 seconds and then they're fine again. So that's kind of the beauty of these guns, especially if you don't let them overheat. Like if you stop firing before they overheat, you only wait like half a second to a second and they'll cool down for you. And you really won't have to worry about that as long as you're maintaining proper gun control, right? You're not going wild with your guns. As long as you're doing that, you're fine. So we don't really care about that. Range of fire, your range is already like 2,600 feet, right? 2,600 feet. You really don't need any more range than that. Like that's pretty effective, you know. You're not a 50 cal machine gun, you know. Your range is respectable, and you're not really gonna have a problem with it. You don't have the crazy range of like a 37 or a 45 or something, but it's still very good. So don't worry about that. And again, for consumables, just ignore the restarter. I mean, if you really want your engine to get fixed, you can. But here's the biggest thing I have with the engine restarter. Unless you do well, no, this one, I think you have to use it, right? It's not automatic. If this one was automatic, then it might be useful, but you have to use it. It just reduces the cooldown that it uses, right? So instead of 90 seconds you have to wait 60 seconds. Okay. So what's the problem with the engine restarter? Well, the way that your engine operates is if you lose your engine, your speed immediately drops. Like, immediately. And then if your engine continues to be damaged, you will continue to lose speed, right? And you're going to just continuously lose speed. But the problem is you won't be able to boost, right? So, the way I think about it, if I repair my engine, well, what have I accomplished? Well, I've given myself the ability to use boost again, which might be useful, but we've already established that I've lost a lot of speed, right? And speed, if I'm trying to use my speed to get away from an opponent, then I no longer can use that method to get away from them because I've already lost my airspeed. So repairing my engine isn't going to do anything for me. Secondly, if I've lost my engine, that doesn't prohibit my ability to turn fight. I'm still maneuverable, and actually if you go slower, you typically have better maneuverability. If you have really wide circle of turning, then that means you're going fast, right? So if you lower your speed, you're actually making that radius of curvature smaller. So honestly, you really don't want to put that on there. I think you'd have, this is like a permanent boost, right? So improved mixture control, you are always guaranteed that bonus, which is just great, right? Just a permanent engine boost, which I love. We all love engine boosts that are permanent. And engine cooling, of course, we keep that because we killed our engine boost duration. So that kind of helps with that. And it helps us get away from opponents if we want to use the boom and zoom, or catch up to a heavy fighter that's going very fast. That also works. So I just prefer constant utility from the engine cooling and permanent buffs from the improved mixture control to a manual restarter. I try to get rid of these restarters as much as possible, especially since if I die from losing my engine, which does happen, I'm not going to say it doesn't, but when it does, you just kind of like brush it off and respawn, right? And if it's squall line, well, tough luck. But generally speaking, you can just respawn, so whoop-de-doo, right? So anyway, that's kind of the main takeaways from the equipment. Finally, we have the pilot. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting, right? So honestly, for this aircraft, I feel like there's a lot of different options you can go for. If you really want to boost up your airspeed, let's say you wanted to build a build where you kind of forego maneuverability for boost and engine performance, then I feel like Engine Guru 1 and 2 could assist with that. But for me, I cared about maneuverability, right? So in my personal build, the build that I enjoy the most is for maneuverability. And because of that, I don't really care about boost as much. And it takes 5 skills to get Engine Guru 1 and 2, right? If you do get Engine Guru 1 or 2 or something, it's not wrong. I just don't recommend it. Personally, I feel like Aerodynamics Expert and Aerobatics Expert are just great for this aircraft. Increasing the maneuverability is just amazing. Of course, don't get this skill if you don't have maneuverability equipment, because then you're wasting your time. So this one only works if you have maneuverability on your aircraft. Although it does increase your speed equipment as well. So if you did go for speed equipment, then you could put that on there as well. It's just a useful skill, honestly. So I'm going to go for that one. Go for that one. Resilience is also amazing. Here's another thing. We lose our engine. Oh, this is a tragedy. We start losing hit points. Oh no, why did we let our engine get destroyed? What a tragedy. Well, if we have this skill, if we're down to just, what is it? 70%. So if we're down to 30% hit points, then all of our broken equipment and dead pilots come back online. So at 30% health, our engine gets repaired automatically. So why do I want an engine restarter? There's very, very, very few times where an engine restarter would save you. Honestly, especially if you had this skill. So if you do drop the engine restarter and are very worried about it, try doing resilience. You might just get amazing. It also increases your maneuverability and engine thrust by 5% when you lose your hit points. Just an extra buff, which is pretty nice. It also reduces your engine and weapon overheating by 50% if you go down to 30% health, which, that's awesome. And it doesn't really say that it's like time-based. So as long as you are at 30% health or less, this skill procs and you get even more flight characteristics, which is great. Cruise flight, that's not a bad one. Yeah, honestly, I feel like the ones you really want to go for are Resilience, Aerodynamics, and Aerobatics Expert. Those are probably the 3 that you really want to go for. If you have extra skills, don't do this one. Your weapons don't overheat very quickly, and your accuracy is already really good, so don't worry about that one. I went for Marksman 1 and 2 just because this pilot, I use them in every other plane that I have pretty much, and so there's no reason why I wouldn't want to do that. But if I swapped it out to Engine Guru 1 and 2, that's not bad either. The rest of them, you just kind of ignore. The 1 skill ones you can put on if you just have a loose skill, but these are the 3 main ones that you really want: Aerodynamics, Aerobatics, and Resilience. Those are the main ones. So, yeah, that was this aircraft, and I will meet you in the battle. Hello everyone, and welcome to the battle replay. So here we have Plateau, I believe is the map that we are playing on, one of the originals. Obviously it doesn't quite look the same as the original, but you know, it does look better. I will give it that. So it's just I believe it's just a garrison map. so nothing too crazy. It's a 5-sector garrison map. We are facing a specialized javelin on the enemy team. Ooh la la. But here, I am specialized. It's one of the first games I played when I did get it specialized and fully maxed out and calibrated and all that sort of stuff. But yes, you're going to see, first of all, look at the flight characteristics. It's very consistent, right? The flight characteristics are very good. And yes, a lot of the equipment that I had reduced my accuracy. But the accuracy still didn't get reduced to the point where I felt like it was bad. It still felt pretty consistent. So I didn't really worry about it too much. The accuracy wasn't absurd. So because of that, it's still very, very, very effective. And yeah. So anyway, this aircraft flies very, very well. Has amazing guns. You'll see that in time. And yeah, I'm pretty much just going to go around and kill planes that I see. I'm not going to worry about flipping sectors too much because, I don't know, I just wanted to see how this plane flew when I first got it specialized. Here's a Key 162-3, so this plane has better maneuverability than us. But we have better airspeed and altitude performance, and so we can just keep on its tail. If he tried maneuvering with us, we could just use our altitude and boost and get away. But in that situation, he didn't really care about us that much, so we just took him out. Oh, there are 2 command centers, by the way. It was not all garrison, but yeah. Here's the Javelin. He's specialized, right? What does the Javelin have? Well, Javelin's actually pretty maneuverable for a heavy fighter. You gotta respect the maneuverability. The airspeed kind of sucks on the Javelin. It's not as fast as the other heavy fighters. And its altitude performance, I think, is good, but I don't think it's as good, or it's not like the best at tier or anything. They just have respectable altitude, but yeah. I got someone on my tail. Look how fast we kill these heavy fighters, though. I got someone on my tail. It doesn't really matter. Guns cool down pretty quick. We're going to come back, and there's nothing he can do. We can keep up on him. We can outturn him, and he's just dead. So we cleaned out house there. Hopefully our bombers in GA can take that back. I don't really want to spend time over there. Instead, I want to just kind of flip sectors quickly. I can't flip that command center quickly, and because of that, I'd rather flip the garrison. So we're over here. TA-183. It has good airspeed, good altitude, but we have better because we're tier 10. So goodbye, TA. Here's some heavy fighters again. I mean, just be gun control, and yeah, it's pretty simple. I don't really see how this plane could be bad. I feel like even for newer players, this plane just flies like you would expect a plane to fly. There's no weird gimmicks, nothing ridiculous. It's got very consistent guns, good airspeed, good maneuverability. And if you just pump that up, I mean, a new player shouldn't have any problem with this aircraft. Here's the Javelin again, and I feel really bad for him, honestly, because what is he going to do against me? I mean, he's going to try to get away from me, but it's not really going to work, is it? We're just going to come over, and goodbye. See you later. I mean, that's just the way this plane is. It's got a very negative reputation, I guess. It's an infamous plane for being strong. And it's for good reason. This plane is strong, and the view that people have on it is not unwarranted. So we took out TA-183. Honestly, there's just planes over here, so why not just shoot them down? Like, I'm getting targets over here, I'm getting lots of damage. Look at that, man. We went head on with a J7, and we won. We came out ahead. Granted, the J7 didn't actually hit us, but we had done so much damage to the bot that the bot freaked out and tried pulling away, and at that point he was already dead. So, but I guess the one thing about J7s, they're a little bit hard to deal with in a maneuverable fight. Oh, here we're just going to get killed, right? I wanted to go after the Javelin, but he had other bot friends over here. Maybe this is where I maybe overextended a little bit, although he may have just pressed F4 on me and had them come after me. My goal here was to kill the F-84F as quickly as possible and then deal with Javelin. Unfortunately, the F-84F was just a little bit too maneuverable, and it took me just a little bit too long to deal with him. As such, I was killed by the Javelin. Not to worry though, we can come back in just a jiffy and head back there. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say about this aircraft. I kind of held off on specializing it for a while and playing it consistently because it's just such a good aircraft. I liked playing the planes that are a bit more unique, maybe. I'm glad that I have it specialized now because if I want, I guess it gives me an option if I'm facing a really good flight on the enemy team or something. This plane has just a lot of good stuff. I think maybe the plane that this plane competes with the most, in my personal opinion, would be the Sabre. Although I know the stats are not quite similar. Its flight characteristics are worse than the Sabre, but this plane just has such better guns. So I know that if people really enjoy the Sabre, they will love this aircraft because it's just consistent. And I think that's the reason why people like the Sabre. You don't have to worry about bad flight characteristics on the Sabre. The guns are a bit lackluster on that plane, but everything else about the Sabre is just really good. And so you can kind of overlook the limitations of the gun because the flight characteristics are so good. This plane has better guns than the Sabre, but not quite as good of flight characteristics. So you trade a little bit of flight characteristics for much more consistent guns, or at least a lot more powerful guns, I guess. And because of that, this plane really competes with the Sabre. It's the kind of the opposite of the Sabre in the sense that, yeah, you have better guns but lower flight characteristics, but you still perform pretty much the same role. All right, the Javelin's going up way up high, so we'll see the altitude performance in action a little bit. I mean, look, we're at 11,000, 12,000 feet. We don't really need to go any higher, right? We're still in the yellow up there, so it's not like necessary to go up any higher, right? It's rare to have to go higher, so don't feel like, even though the altitude performance might be lower than other altitude fighters, it's usually not a limitation. We just got Ace right there, and here's a specialized ground attacker. So look at the damage output. You know, that's a GA. Fighters usually are not supposed to be able to kill GA quickly, but this plane, because of the guns, I mean, you can dish out the damage very quickly. I guess one quick other point, I noticed since I last made a video that they increased the altitude performance of all planes across the board, and I don't know exactly why they did that. I know they probably had reasons, but honestly, I don't mind. I actually had wanted them to increase the altitude ratings of all aircraft for a very long time because I just felt like it's this plane kind of needs that altitude performance, right? So I'm actually kind of pretty happy about the increased altitude performance because it adds a little bit more diversity, so not everyone is in this little teeny tiny bubble. It gives you another dimension, if you will, of being able to fight, and I like that. And here, the battle, we are behind on points. We have more caps than them, so it doesn't really matter. We're still going to beat them. It's just a matter of time. They only have 1 or 2 aircraft left, so we're going to see if we can go after them. Honestly, I could have probably ignored that garrison and just gone after the last guy, because then the battle would have lasted maybe a little bit longer, but I wasn't really that worried about it. I wasn't sure if the planes were going to die before I got there, so I just wanted to get a little bit of extra points before the battle ended. But it seems like taking that cap might have hurt me a little bit. No, not really. I may have gotten that kill, but I would have lost everything else. So yeah, we got Ace, which, you know, is very good. Kazav Dub, which 5 kills after Squall, which is not bad. 21,000 personal points. So yeah, that was just a very good battle. So here we're going to be seeing the post-battle results. I'm not going to really speak about them, but I think this plane kind of speaks for itself, right? So I know that some people don't really care for like the 109G, 109F, or the TA or anything like that, but or the 209A, I guess, is the other plane in the line. But honestly, if you get to the 1092 and 1101, you're just going to be really pleasantly surprised, especially if it's like your first tier 10. It's very new player friendly, and it's one of the more powerful planes of the tier. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you on the next one. If you have any questions or concerns, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.